where are you right now? Is this your co-working office space? It seems pretty empty.
This is officially Flashback HQ. We've just gotten into the space about 2 weeks ago, thanks to Abby Cameron, who is an amazing founder and gives so much back to the community in literally any way she can. And she's been graceful enough to let us into her workspace that she rents and kind of let us use it as a co-working environment. So yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely a dream come true.
So where are all the cameras?
All the cameras, they're all sold out. They're all gone. They're in customers' hands around the world. Funnily
Man,
enough, mainly in France. They're popping off in France. The French love our cameras.
Well, I mean, we're just catching up a little bit off the back of Shark Tank, but obviously lots happened since ilab at the start of the year.
Mhm.
I guess, do you get to a point where now your camera's popping off in France? Are you doing marketing and pieces for just everywhere in the world? Are you focusing just on Australia or really everywhere at the moment?
So there's a really interesting and beautiful thing about organic marketing, which is the pride and joy of Flashback. We believe that we don't exist without being a digital agency. Um, and a part of that is we do all this organic marketing. And the thing with organic marketing is once you put it out there, it goes by itself wherever it wants. And that's been our key to being able to sell in 65 countries literally on the day that we launched, because our following is all around the world, because we made organic videos, we put them out, and they kind of just spread everywhere. So
That's awesome. I guess when you talk about the day of launch, what year was that when you kind of sold that first camera?
the first, well, technically speaking, the first camera was sold in like the middle of 2021 as a pre-order. There was no prototype. It was just to like 20 of our friends. So I don't really completely count those. But the technical first camera, hey man, was sold in our first couple of minutes of our Kickstarter, which we launched in March, April, May 2023. So a little bit over a year ago now, about a year and 6 months ago.
Awesome. And before that, you were really focusing on building your socials. Was
Yeah,
that
it
kind of
was.
how you launched really? Like it was hey, this is what we're working towards. This is kind of what we're about, building the brand. And then when you launch, like you said, be able to sell product.
Yeah, so there were basically two things that were moving at the same time, parallel to each other from right at the very beginning. It was brand and it was product. Because we built this product from the ground up, with no experience between the two of us, that process took a long time. And the brand was something that we didn't realize would also be very, very difficult, just like the product. So we started building that right at the start. So back in 2021, what it was me making Instagram posts while Mac and I were sitting in a room, like dismantling disposable film cameras and working out how the flash was working and trying to make some crazy, monstrous, like hybrid of tech in there while we're posting it on Instagram. And
So you
from
kind
day
of,
one, yeah, both those things moved at the same time.
yeah, so you were sharing your story on actually the camera coming to life on socials. And that's obviously been the key part of,
Yeah.
getting the customers who have been OGs in terms of the flashbacks journey.
I have to admit, when we first started, like there's been a lot of lessons learned since we started. And
No.
right at the start, Mac and I thought that we needed to pretend to be a company and not two guys in a sweaty little back room in a share house. So at the very start, we were kind of making posts that were very vague, that were like kind of pretending to be like this big company with all these people, and it did not work. No one cares about it. There's no authenticity. There's just, yeah, it doesn't work. So we really didn't get any traction on our socials or our brand until we understood that the brand needs to be founder led and it needs to be transparent or authentic, because the thing that people like are, oh, these are just a couple dudes just like me working hard trying to create something cool for us. And then that's something people can relate to and people want to back. And I think that was our secret sauce and our key to our success in our branding.
So you sold your first camera in mid 2021. Did you say? You ended up taking a few years to evolve, and you ended up going through ilab at the start of this year.
Mhm.
Between selling that first camera and getting into ilab, what happened? Was this like, one day you'd wake up, you'd sold a heap, the next day you'd sold none? Was it this kind of jump
Okay.
and then like false starts every time, or what did the next? That's like is that 2.5?
Yeah,
Yeah,
about
2.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to clarify, our first camera sold
Yes.
was one of my best friends, Abby O'Rourke. I literally went to her with a photo of a horrible render I did on CAD, and I was like, "Hey, can you pre-order this for $40? Like, we're gonna make this maybe in a year's time. You should pre-order it now." And she pre-ordered that, and that's technically the first camera sold. But I mean, no camera existed. It was just a dodgy render. And then I
Yes.
think maybe 15 of my other friends kind of backed us and put like $40 in each for a product. It was, you couldn't really class it as a camera sale. So that was like right at the start. Then we basically worked out how difficult it was going to be to make a product. And the way that worked was
But I
first
was going to say real quick there, Kelric, something that is important is before you go in and work out if you're going to put all the time into it, it's super important to know that people actually would want to buy it.
Yeah.
So like, I know it's not classic, it's not going, hey, we sold a physical camera, but those 16 people, whoever, obviously really thought what you were doing was cool, apart from obviously just liking you because they're your friends. But to get someone to reach into their pocket and give you $40 for something that doesn't exist is almost like better than a first sale.
Yeah. It was a good form of validation. I think the tricky thing with that was it was hard to validate whether it was more the product or more our sales ability.
Yeah, true.
I would probably lean to a bit more of the sales ability because back then, like we didn't even know how the tech was going to work in the camera. We didn't even have the idea for the app for the camera back then. It was literally just like a disposable camera that worked, a non-disposable digital camera that worked exactly the same as a disposable. There was no app in it either. A little bit murky waters there on the validation. But yeah, to validate what we did is we spent a lot of time going around at uni. And we actually used our Instagram and our brand to kind of validate a little bit more, where we would literally go around spinning stories to people that talked about the product that we were trying to make, and then we'd get them to sign up to our Instagram. And we thought the quickest way to the first 1,000 followers would literally be boots on the ground, talk about the product, show them anything that remotely close to what the product could be, and literally like we'd walk around campus and just go from like group to group, just walking in like, "Oh, hey guys, sorry to interrupt you. I just want to talk to you about this camera we're working on." And we literally just talk to people and get some ideas from people, get some validation. Then we took that a step up and we went to Cromwell College, my old college at UQ, and we ran a few survey groups. We just printed out sheets and sheets of paper, bought everyone pizza, and we sat down. We're just like asking all these open-ended questions, some more pointed stuff, to work out what type of camera would fit the market.
That's awesome. So I think that's probably another thing that's really helpful about going to university is because you've got tens of thousands of people who go through campuses each and every day. So I think that's something that probably is underutilized a little bit. Do you remember how many people you probably spoke to get your first 1,000 followers? Was this like a 1-for-1, or was there like group conversations trying to get to that 1,000? Yeah.
Most of the time there were 3 to 4 people on average in a little group, like the people sitting in the great court at UQ, reading or studying. So we probably talked about 1,500 people. Maybe a little bit under that. It's hard to tell. But yeah, we definitely got a lot of no's in like, "Oh no, I don't want to follow that account. Not interested, blah blah blah." Definitely got a lot of that. So there would have been a few more people that we talked to get to that 1,000.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that probably a lot of founders don't chat to enough people. I guess you had the fortune of inventing a product that really spoke to uni students.
Yes.
When you kind of got through that initial, we're going back to Cromwell and chatting to them, you went through and chatted to students across both UQ and I guess QUT campuses. Then you knew you had something. Then you figured out how to build the camera and the flash and everything. When was the first time, like you said, then when you sold the first, you got past the pre-orders, you're actually shipping it. When you started to sell, was there days when it was really big and small and days when you were like questioning things? Because it still feels like, you're talking about the number of cameras you're selling now would have kind of felt really impossible.
Yep.
Back at the start of 2022. So what was the process? What were the sales like from when the first time you actually sold and could ship a real camera? Do you remember the first day?
So we marketed our brand without marketing the camera for a year before we started. So basically, we had some really, really good advice from Chris Conway at Shape Labs. It's an engineering firm. They do really good work, and he was nice enough to give us a lot of mentorship along the way in our early days. And one of the big things he said, if you're doing a Kickstarter, don't rely on Kickstarter for your sales. Kickstarter is not a platform that will push you. You have to have a backing before you go to Kickstarter. If you don't have that backing, you'll go to Kickstarter and you'll die. So that was some fantastic advice. And we basically decided that we had to learn the hard way in how to storytell and how to sell the problem. So we literally made content. We had conversations with people without ever mentioning the camera. So yes, we validated the camera, talking to those people, walking around UQ. Once we got to the first 1,000 followers, we stopped walking around UQ and we started just making content on Instagram. And all that content was about the problem. We never mentioned the camera until probably about a year later. We launched the camera to the public, not to purchase, but as a thing that we were working on. And it was, I remember we launched a photo or a video of a 3D printed camera that literally was filled with rocks. So it felt heavy enough, like it had the internals inside of it. So that taught us a lot. And I think if we didn't do that, the Kickstarter story would be very different. I hear a lot of people go to Kickstarter and they fail and they don't get, maybe they've set a goal of 50,000 and they get maybe 10,000 and they run out of the time and they're trying to sprint in the last, 7 days of their month-long campaign and they're trying to, get 60% of their goal and they're just sprinting hard. We said, if we're going to Kickstarter, we had to be very confident we'd get our goal. So truth be told, I was very surprised at our Kickstarter night when we hit 80,000 within the first 13 minutes. On face value, I think I was very surprised. But deep down inside, I was very confident that we'd hit our goal because before we clicked launch on that Kickstarter, we made sure we had 10,000 people on a mailing list. We made sure to have 30,000 followers on an Instagram account. We made sure to have 50,000 on a TikTok account. And those were all goals and KPIs we set a year beforehand. And we said, we'll give ourselves a year and we'll work our asses off to grow a following, so we have someone to convert at Kickstarter. So luckily, I never had the point where we had a product to sell and we just weren't able to sell enough. The trickiest part and the hardest part of the whole journey, I remember, was the questioning it all probably in the 4 to 6 months before Kickstarter, when we were grinding away on social media. And we were trying to create a following and we're just post after post, video after video, TikTok after TikTok, trying to experiment in how to communicate this problem to an audience and garner a following. That was the time Mac and I were questioning, like, can we do this? Is it going to work? What happens if we get to Kickstarter and we don't have enough? Are we going to click the launch button? Are we going to push it off and keep pushing off uni and pushing off our careers? And at this point, Mac was... a little bit before this point, Mac was working at a tech company, and he was already on a big salary before he even graduated uni. So he could have been out there making 100K a year, but he chose to follow something that he's passionate about. We both chose to kind of risk it for that dream, and that was probably the scariest point of the whole thing. It was just more about building that brand up and that following rather than not selling a camera day to day. Once we launched the product, we were golden. We've never had an issue since we launched in Kickstarter. Only issues being we don't have enough product for the people that want it. So we launched Kickstarter. We sold. We did 80,000 the first 13 minutes, and then we went off over the next 35 days to close out at 800,000. So it was roughly about 5,000 something cameras, which was to go to our manufacturer and basically put down an order for our first order. That's also something we did. We made sure that everything was paid for in the development process and everything was ready to go in manufacturing as soon as we got the money from Kickstarter. I hear a lot of horror stories about people go to Kickstarter and they go, great, we're going to get this, $500,000 and we're going to use it to build the product. Fantastic. You've built the product now. You've got, 5,000 people waiting for the product. You've paid for it to be developed, and now where are you going to get the money to actually manufacture? And then a lot of people die at that point, and then you get a lot of very angry people on Kickstarter. So we made sure not to do that. We made sure to have the money to just go straight into manufacturing and start running. And since then, we literally started producing cameras, and then we initially sold it in batches because we didn't have quite enough capital to bridge the gap. So we do a big batch, then we stopped marketing entirely. After Kickstarter, we stopped marketing for about 6 months. Then we fulfilled all of our cameras in December, January. So December 2023 and January 2024. Then we opened it back up to our second pre-order for our second batch. And then we closed that off again, stopped selling, stopped pre-orders, manufactured the cameras, got those out. And eventually we hit mid-year this year on our third batch. And just recently after our third batch, we've been able to maintain sales on a daily pace and manufacture at a rate to cover ourselves.
So, I mean, when you first started marketing until you actually, I guess properly ordered the first bunch of cameras, you were pretty lean on how much you spent, it seems. So yes, you would have had to go through, do some mock-ups. You mentioned 3D printing. Do you have an idea of how much you spent up until you actually put that first order in, roughly? Because I think a lot of the time when you chat to early stage startups, they kind of dump in to spending money, be like, oh, we've got to build this to show that we've actually got something that then people can buy. So they kind of catch themselves in, they can't move anywhere because they don't have money to build the thing, and they feel like they're kind of frozen and they need the money. Where it's almost like you go, how can we, it's a true MVP, right? It's like, how do we quickly and cheaply as possible get something where we can start to prove out that people will want to buy it? You've actually done it the way that startups should be doing it. Do you know how much you spent up until you did that first order?
I would also disagree with you slightly there.
Yeah.
Looking back now, I think we were a bit risky in our first year and a half. We struggled a lot with how can we validate a physical product like that we were building cheaply. And the problem is so much about what our product is its physical feel. So there's digital cameras out there everywhere. There's really expensive ones, there's cheap ones, there's all sorts of types. One of our biggest unique points is how it feels. It's got a winder, it's got this certain look, and that's a very hard thing to validate. If it was just the images that it was taking, you can give someone a camera that's made out of a cardboard box, and you take it and then you see the photos and people are like, wow, the photos are great. Okay, you validate the product. But with ours, it's like that feeling we needed to validate, that fun winding up. Like, do people want that? And that was a really hard thing to DIY in the early days. So we probably 3D printed, God, I don't know how many cameras in the early days. And we were trying to create all these homemade mechanisms with glue and all sorts of stuff to just get something in people's hands. And it was incredibly challenging. So we probably didn't crack that code 100%. I don't think. We were probably a little bit risky. And we just used a whole lot of sweat equity to get through the first little bit. We saved money literally everywhere we could, and every dollar went into producing a prototype that we could really validate with, which is definitely a bit risky. We put in initially $60,000 to start the company between Mac and I. So Mac got that from his job that he was working. I got that from working on a farm and saving up my money and doing some currency trading back during COVID. I made a lot of money on that. So we took those funds and we started the company, and then we basically did all of our marketing free. We didn't pay ourselves a single cent. We ate as minimal food as possible. We got our rent as cheap as possible. Mac was literally sleeping under a staircase in my share house to save cash. And everything went into product. That initial 60,000 got us pretty far. We bought our own 3D printer, and we developed some firmware, and we had kind of like this rudimentary camera that we could test a little bit, but we still couldn't really test that feeling. So we pushed on, we took a bit of a risk. We said, let's keep prototyping. We got all the way through to a prototype that was, I would say, 70 to 80% of the way there, had a winder, had things like that in it. Still felt a bit shitty and janky, but that probably cost us probably $150,000 to get to that point.
Wow.
So a lot of, that first 60 was from us. And then we started with the F's, friends, family, and fans. So we went to our friends, and our friends were actually the first people that invested in our company. Then we went to family, we got a little bit of money there, and then we were able to go all the way through to manufacturing, which was about $200,000. to
Wow.
get all the way to a manufacturable product. The biggest cost in that was developing the molds for manufacturing. So when you make something out of, I'm sure you know this, when you make a product out of plastics, especially, you need to make a mold. And molds can set you anywhere from 20,000 to 60,000 to 80,000, depending on what the mold's made out of and how long you want that mold to last. And it's literally just a giant metal block with all the internals kind of carved out on a CNC machine so you can inject your plastic into it. So that was the expensive part. And that cost us about $200,000. And then we went to
Wow.
Kickstarter straight from there.
So yeah, okay. Well, scrap my additional thinking of how cheaply you did it. It still obviously had to cost a lot more than that. When you actually started to build. So what was the point then? You decided to throw the 60 in, because I guess that's the point. You had to go, cool, we're actually in on this or we're not. You mentioned how tough it was to build, to get the followers and have those conversations. At that point, I guess you hadn't really committed to putting the money in. But like you said, I think the coolest part is you actually just spoke about the problem versus what the solution was going to be. So what was the point? You said, okay, I think we've got enough here to go and do everything we need to do. You bought the 3D printer. You really made a full commitment to go and spend that 60, or is that literally from day one?
I can't remember exactly the day that we said, let's throw the money in. But I do remember that Mac and I have always been, we've always lived by the mantra of fortune favors the bold. And I know that sounds a bit silly, but we seriously believe that. We did a lot of things in college where we were just very bold, and out of that came good fortune for us. Whether it's like traveling overseas, taking a risky flight, whatever it was, we always found that if you were bold, you were rewarded. So it's actually, that's literally on, if you invest in our company, your share certificate has fortune favors the bold written in Greek in it. So I think we have been very gung-ho, and I think we both jumped in pretty early, pretty like full on into it. We just kind of decided, yep, we're going to do it, and we just jumped into it. So I would say that initial 60K would have come in probably within the first 6 to 8 months. I think we dropped that money in.
Yeah.
And we were very careful in spending it, because obviously that Mac worked a bit in his job to get that. I slogged out over sitting in front of a screen trading Forex. And it was all we had. That was my entire net worth. That was his entire net worth. That's every little cent we had. And yeah, we just kind of threw it in probably in that first 6 to 8 months and just went for it.
Okay. So fast forward, you end up getting into ilab at the start of 2024.
Yep.
You mentioned
God
you'd
bless
raised,
you, Ventures.
of course. Shout out to Tyson and the team. So you ended up getting that. Was that the first time you took that, I guess, external capital that wasn't family, friends, fans, as you put it, or had you done kind of a bit of a raise before then?
No, so we had raised through friends, family, and fans.
I love how you've changed the last F, because normally it's fools.
No full invest in Flashback. It's a smart thing to do.
I like the fans one. That's awesome.
Yeah, so we basically so our 200,000 that we needed to get to a manufacturable product that we can go in the factory floor, click the button and start printing them out. It's literally all set up, all ready to go. That 200,000 we got from ourselves and then from friends and family. And that was a slog. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like Mac and I we don't come from circles that are just handing out money. That was a really difficult thing to find that money. And one of my biggest lessons I learned is don't judge people. You never know where it's going to come from. So our biggest investment came from the most rare place. You'd never expect finding it. It was such a peculiar story, just having a beer in a basement. Oh, our first big investment, just like that. But it was hard.
So
we talked to a lot of people. We made a lot of phone calls. That took a long time. That probably took us to get that investment, to get all the way there. That probably took us 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
But we had raised all of that money, and we had done our Kickstarter and sold the cameras before we went into ilab. So we went into ilab just as we were fulfilling our first batch of 5,000 cameras.
Okay. And did you find that was a good time to jump in? That's when you're like, okay, we've really got something serious. We probably need to kind of understand everything else that goes around the business side. Or how did you kind of come off? I mean, how'd you go into ilab, and then how'd you come out?
So looking at the time we went into ilab, it was a very busy time for us because we were dealing with our first ever logistics fulfillment issues. So that period of time in like, especially February, like Abby was sitting at a computer doing customer service. My mum was sitting at a computer doing customer service, just like, because we were just getting messages after messages. We realized how crazily unreliable the postal service in our entire world is. It's a miracle to me that any packages get delivered, to be honest. So it was a busy time. So we were very apprehensive going into a program such as ilab that takes a day a week, when that day a week was crucial for us. It was make or break, really, whether that time needed to be sunk in to customer service, and also the support, the digital support for the products, because we rolled out 5,000 products and the app was downloaded 5,000 times, and we had images going to our servers. And so we were plugging in computers in our house and trying to get everything running, and Mac was writing code to fix bugs like constantly, like non-stop. So we were pretty scared about going to ilab and sacrificing a day a week, but we kind of looked at each other and we said, you know what, no, we're gonna make it work. We're gonna pull the late nights, and we're just gonna make it work because we saw value in it. And to answer your question, I think looking at ilab, whether was the right time for us to go into it, I would happily go in then. If I hadn't done it, I would happily go in now. And if I could go back, I would have gone into it way earlier. I think whatever point you're at in your company, you've probably got a lot to learn from ilab. And I think ilab's really good because they particularly curate everything for the people that are sitting in front of them. So we had, we were over $1 million in revenue in ilab, and there were other founders there that were literally pre-revenue. They had nothing yet. They hadn't even validated their product yet. And I think both of us got a ton of value out of it, which is done all through the curation that ilab does to make sure that there's value in it. It's not a uni course, it's an accelerator program, so they want to see you accelerate. So yeah, I would go into ilab literally at any point along the startup journey.
So you come out of ilab, you have kind of 6-8 months-ish pass, you get a call to come and pitch at Shark Tank. What kind of happened between finishing ilab, getting into Shark Tank? Like what happened in between those two moments, I guess?
So there was a entrepreneur that came in and spoke at one of the ilab sessions that said, make sure, and I think this applies to even outside of ilab, if you're just in a startup, this applies to you. Make sure when you come out of ilab, you don't relax. Run faster. And I think that's in startups. Like if you want to generally be in a startup, you've got to run faster every day. Like it's an endurance run, but you're also sprinting constantly as well. And so I really listened to that advice. And when we came out of ilab, we used the pitch night to kind of do a little bit of PR and get a little PR practice. And we started reaching out to a bunch of news articles, stuff like that, just to get the more word out and to also hype ourselves up and keep us excited. And we basically honestly, it's been a bit of a blur, so I can't tell you the exact details of what we've done, but we doubled down on basically our logistics. We started the process of working out how to take it from a startup to a daily running company. That's been very challenging, and I'm very glad that ilab came in for us to give us advice on that, because that's actually, I think, something a lot of people look past is, you're in a startup, you're just two people, and then all of a sudden you hit this phase where, after ilab, you've got a product that's selling, and you're like, holy crap, we need more people. Like, how the hell do you do that? ilab kind of geared us up and made us ready for that. So there's been a lot of that. So like since, and I've mentioned her a few times, but Abby, one of my best mates, now works for us. So she's just been around since the very beginning, like helping out. She's put in hours and hours and hours. And we've finally been able to bring her on full time. So that's been a huge help. We've, made a few more hires around the place in the last, between ilab and now. And we've slowly grown. We've improved our product. We've started talking about what's the next product, looking at the bigger picture. We've kind of learnt a lot about advertisement now, going into like more of a traditional advertising, along with the organics, just so we have that reliability of the daily moving machine that we want Flashback to be. So it's kind of been a plethora of a lot of things. And then
So
somewhere in there, I applied to Shark Tank.
yeah, so you applied to Shark Tank. You're you get asked to come and pitch. What was that process like from the application? Then do you go through do a couple of pitches, or is it kind of like they throw you in the deep end, or
Yep.
what was that like?
So basically, the way it works is, and again, thank God to ilab because they actually prepped us so well for this process without really knowing. But it's very similar to an investment process. So like due diligence. So the first step is you contact Shark Tank. They put out like a auditions kind of thing, and you just do the usual. What's your company? Who are you? Why are you the right founders to make something happen? What's the plan? Where are you going to go? All that kind of stuff. So we filled out all of that. I send in the application. Then they come back and they're like, okay, this sounds interesting. Give us your documents. And they want everything. They want your accounting, they want like a high school business plan kind of overview. They want like all of your social proof, they want all your traction. And you break it up like there and yeah, like all sorts of documents. They want it all. So you
Yeah.
supply them all of that stuff. You write some more briefs, a little bit more in-depth descriptions of things. You send that off. You leave it with them for a couple of weeks. Then you just wait to see if you get a call. We got a phone call. I remember I was out walking my dog with Mac. We were going like walking down to the chemist, and I got a phone call, and I was like, "Oh, hey, what's up? Who's this?" And they're just like, "Oh, it's Emily from Shark Tank." And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Mac, be cool, be cool." Yes, hi, Emily. Good to hear from you. How are you? And then she asked us a few questions. She kind of said, like, what are you seeking? Like, what investment are you seeking on Shark Tank? What numbers do you think you're going to do in the future? Like, just kind of following up on a few
Yeah.
things from our documents. And then she basically says, cool, well, this is like the first interview, and that sounded good. I will hit you up with a second interview in the next week, 2 weeks. So kind of hang up the phone, wait a little bit, and then she called us again, and she was just like, hey, here's your next interview. Ask us a bunch more questions. I turned on the charm a little bit. And then she basically said, okay, well, we'll give you confirmation. You'll either get a yes or a no from this point over the next 2 weeks. And then I think she called up one last time. She's like, cool. Are these dates good for you? Can you come down to Sydney? Don't worry about your flights. We'll pay for it. Don't worry about accommodation. We'll pay for that. Just let me know if these dates work. And I said, yeah, cool.
Of course.
It's actually funny. Mac and I both had trips overseas planned for this period. So I had booked, I think, 2 days before
No.
Shark Tank Day to go all the way over to Europe. So I canceled the trip and I moved it all back, and I didn't get the refundable tickets. Should have done it. My mom told me to. I did
No.
this.
Yeah. You got to save that money on purchase, Don't want to put that investment in early on. Of course you're going to go overseas. What's going to stop you doing that?
So yeah, moved my flights back, cost me an arm and a leg. And yeah, we got our date, and then the day rolls up and you keep practicing your pitch. Oh, the pitch is actually something that they do a little bit of back and forth on, because they want to make sure you're not going to pull any crazy shit. And they want to make sure that you're going to do a good job. So they do a little bit back and forth. And I said, hey, can we do this? They're like, no. I'm like, okay, what about if we do this? No. But what about a small fire? No. So we kind of had to tame everything down a little bit.
You say a
And
small
then,
fire?
yeah, we had a bunch of ideas. We
Okay.
were going to make some
Good.
stunts. We were going to pull
Okay.
some stunts.
All right.
Anyway,
That's a great bit of content. I want to see all the things that Shark Tank wouldn't let you do.
yeah, it was a lot of stuff. It was a lot of stuff. But we ended up kind of taming it all down, and we just rehearsed over and over and over again for probably a 2 to 3 week period. And then the day came, we packed our bags, we got in an Uber, and we flew down to Sydney for the morning. We spent the day in Sydney kind of just rocking around, pitching, practice, went to a park, practice our pitch, did some work. Went to the hotel. They set us up in a really nice place. Stayed there the night, and the next morning, kind of had a few things to do. Like in our Shark Tank pitch, we had like this, like some photos that we held up. So I went and got those printed, got our props, that kind of thing. We got our hair done, and then we went into Disney Studios early afternoon. And then we basically got mic'd up. They did some makeup, did some photo shoots, ran through some stuff with us, and then you go into the studio and they do a bunch of like pre-Shark Tank shots of you like in the room, like looking all pensive and like looking nervous and like walking up and down, pacing, all that kind of stuff. So you do that for probably about half an hour. You get a peek at what your set looks like. And then they say, okay, walk to the door, come back, do that like 6 times, we'll film you. And then one time the door is just going to open. When that door opens, you just go in. So the door opens and you walk into the middle of the room, you stand on this little circle, and they say you have to wait until the Shark Tank music stops. And then you got to look at each shark to like make it really dramatic. So you walk in and it's the longest song I've ever heard in my life, that Shark Tank music. And you're just standing there and then finally it ends and then you start your pitch. And we went straight into it. It's all going really smoothly. And then one of the sharks starts coughing. She's coughing. And the director comes out and is like, cut, stop, everyone stop. Gets some water, brings it over. Has to go, are you okay? Yes, that's great. And then looks at me like, all right, take it from the third line. And I'm just like, oh my God, the third line? What the hell was the third line? We reset and then I just jumped back into it. Mac had to redo his whole little intro bit and then we kept going.
Cool. What an experience.
And it was about probably an hour in the tank, to be honest, going back and forth with questions. So they cut a lot of stuff out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like it was a lot of fun. Was it kind of what you thought it was going to be, or was you a bit like, wow, this is not really what I was imagining?
I think the only thing that caught me off guard, which when you think about makes a lot of sense, but you watch the show and it's, the 2 or 3 or 1 person pitching in this side of the room and then across is all the sharks. Like, okay, you walk in this room and you pitch. But in reality, the side of that room, there's no walls or anything, and there's probably about 20 people all standing at the side with cameras and booms and directors and PAs and everyone watching. And it's actually quite a lot of people just all crammed in the side. So I just kind of didn't look at them. And I'm very happy for pitch night at ilab because I got a pitch in front of 500 people. So I was already pretty comfortable with that. But that was probably the biggest thing that I kind of didn't expect. And then all of a sudden you just start talking to them and they're honestly just normal people. It's not quite as dramatic as what the show obviously is edited to be like. They just ask questions. As long as you can answer your questions, I think it goes pretty smoothly. And yeah, it's just a back and forth. Yeah, it's quite fun.
So you walked away, you got the money you're after. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Probably, I mean, when you compare it to the first 200 you had to raise, this still feels quite difficult, but maybe not as long as it took to raise the first. When I guess it's good now, like, did you find off the back of it, you saw a bump in sales and you saw like a new crowd coming to Flashback, a jump in followers or a jump in, because I guess you do these things, you kind of think, cool, you got some publicity, more eyeballs on the product. Did you notice a difference?
I know. Yeah, we definitely saw some more sales. It wasn't crazy dramatic like a lot of people lead you to believe Shark Tank.
Yeah.
I think there is a big difference between Shark Tank America and Shark Tank Australia. Shark Tank America, their viewership is very, very big. So they have genuine Shark Tank magic that could be like completely made for your company just off the back of Shark Tank. I don't think Australia quite has that. Like the show was literally a hiatus period for like 5 years. So it doesn't quite have that, but we definitely still saw a bump in sales for sure. Especially because we did a lot of cross posting and stuff like that with Shark Tank socials and with some of the with the sharks themselves. So we definitely did see a bump in sales. The weirdest one for me personally has been like my personal life. I've had a lot of people watch the show and kind of reach out to me and just say, oh, like, hey, saw you on TV. That was crazy. Didn't know you were on there. Wow, I didn't know you were doing this. I didn't know Flashback was a thing at all. Like, wow, this is really cool. So that's been pretty weird, to be honest, for me. I went down to a petrol station 2 days ago and someone was like, hey, I saw you on Shark Tank the other day. So that was a pretty weird moment.
Did you say, did you buy a camera? This would have been the question. It must be strange as well, because when you're living in the world every day of Flashback, you kind of think everyone knows you. Everyone knows what you're doing. Like in your network knows what you're doing. So it probably was a good thing to be like, hey, maybe I can talk about this more.
Yep.
So you finished now. I know you're helping out with ilab this week. I mean tomorrow, but this will be out tomorrow. Oh no, Thursday. which is great. You're still kind of coming back to help along with other kind of cohorts that are going through. You mentioned you're starting to think about a next product and what the next 12, 18 months looks like, 5 years. Like, how far now are you looking with Flashback? Because I guess you're kind of seeing now that this is a business that can potentially be around for a long time. How are you seeing the next, well, let's stretch out a little bit more, 5 years?
Yep. Okay. Well, the 5 year mark is, we want to be what Red Bull is to extreme sports. We want Flashback to be for like real life human connection at events. So you think of any event where it's just people connecting, we want Flashback to be what Red Bull is to extreme sports. That's our big goal. That's our big thing that we're striving for and that we believe we can do. To get there, a few things need to happen. Our product right now is an MVP. It's not perfect by any means. There's a lot of problems with our product, a lot of things that Mac and I have always wanted. We initially envisioned to be a lot better than what we've got right now. So the first step is V2, which will be, we take our product that we've got now and take it all the way to what it needs to be and improve things from like its performance with the app, its, how fast it works, to its image quality, its, dynamic range, just the simple stuff like that. V2 needs to come out. So we're working pretty heavily on that now. I'm not going to tell you when it's coming out, but we're not too far off, which is very exciting. And then
awesome.
From there, retail will be a big deal for us in the next 2 years. Getting V2 into retail. We have purposely not pushed this product into retail because we think we can do better before we go to retail. Yaz, through the ilab program, gave Mac and I some really good advice that we've got a profitable product that people really like and they really care about it. So we should focus on that and not go too crazy trying to go, like we'll make a new social media and we'll make this other video camera and we'll make this 360 camera and all this other stuff. We are purposely trying to narrow ourselves in, not spread ourselves too thin, concentrate on the product we've got, concentrate on the next version of that product that improves all the things that we've validated that people want, and keep growing our brand. From there, there's a lot of different avenues we can go down, but the core thing between those potential future products are that we're fighting the addiction to phones in young people. We're trying to bring authenticity back, and we're giving products to people that allow them to put down their phones, live more in the moment, be more mindful of what they're doing, and create some genuine memories. So that's our core similarity between all the products of our future. As long as we keep that, we are going to keep experimenting with other ways that we can help that problem.
That's awesome, man. Feels like you guys have really got your head screwed on right, really focused. It's probably one of those things that can get a little bit overwhelming with the opportunities you're probably seeing pop up and, the kind of amount of loyal fans that you've got at the moment who are purchasing and, 65 different countries around the world. But you're realizing there's a long way to go as well. So it feels like you've got a really good balance around your approaching. Congratulations on, starting it. Raising money with family and friends, obviously getting into ilab and, getting money in Shark Tank as well is a huge achievement. So excited to see where you guys go. And obviously we're going to stay in touch and keep riding your, what is it? Coattails? So I look forward to many more conversations with you, Kelly. Really good to catch up and congratulations again.
Likewise. Thank you very much. This has been fun.